Egypt, a land of power and splendor. But for the children of Israel, it became a crucible of suffering. Generations after Joseph, a new Pharaoh arose, one who did not remember, one who feared. And so the people were crushed beneath brick and whip. Sons were stolen, rivers ran with grief, and hope was fading like dust in the sun. But God had not forgotten. Moses was a man torn between two worlds, raised in the palace of Pharaoh but born of the enslaved. Though clothed in silk, he carried the silent suffering of his people in his heart. One day, his anger boiled over. He struck down an Egyptian taskmaster, and with that blow, his world shattered. Moses fled into the wilderness, from judgment, from his past, and from himself. For 40 years he wandered in exile, a forgotten shepherd in the land of Midian. He thought his story was over, but God had not forgotten. Upon the lonely slopes of Mount Horeb, in the stillness of desert wind, Moses saw a fire, a bush engulfed in flame, yet unconsumed. As he drew near, a voice thundered from the flame, "Moses, Moses, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." And in that moment, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob revealed himself, not as a distant deity, but as the God who sees, who hears, who delivers. "I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cry. I am sending you." Moses trembled. "Who am I to go to Pharaoh?" But God answered, "I will be with you." Thus began the transformation of a fugitive into a deliverer. Moses returned to Egypt, not as a fugitive, but as a prophet of the Most High. At his side was Aaron, his brother, his voice. Together they stood before the most powerful man on earth and delivered God's command, "Thus says the Lord, let my people go." But Pharaoh laughed. Hardened by pride, he mocked the God of Israel. And so God answered, not with more words, but with signs and wonders. The Nile turned to blood. Frogs swarmed the land. Gnats rose from the dust. Flies blackened the skies. The livestock died. Boils struck man and beast. Hail fell like stones from the heavens. Locusts devour everything green. Darkness covered the land, thick, unnatural, total. Yet Pharaoh's heart remained like stone. Then came the 10th, the final blow. God himself passed through Egypt. In every Egyptian home, the firstborn fell. Not even Pharaoh's own son was spared. But to the Israelites, God gave a sign. The blood of a lamb spread across the doorposts. Death passed over those homes. It was the first Passover, a night of sorrow and salvation. Pharaoh broke. He summoned Moses in the dead of night and cried out, "Leave, go, take your people and go." And so, after 400 years, Israel walked free. But their journey was just beginning. In the dead of night, a cry rose over Egypt, louder than war drums, deeper than grief. Pharaoh, broken by the hand of God, called for Moses one last time. "Go, leave us, take your people, and bless me also." So, after 400 years of slavery, the children of Israel walked free. They marched as a people redeemed, carrying gold, silver, and the bones of Joseph, over 600,000 souls, led not by generals, but by the very presence of God. By day, he led them in a pillar of cloud, by night in a column of fire. But Pharaoh's pride awoke once more. With his elite chariots, he pursued, and the people of Israel found themselves trapped, Pharaoh behind them, and the Red Sea before them. They cried out, paralyzed by fear. But Moses raised his staff and declared, "Do not be afraid, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord." Then God moved. The cloud descended behind them, cloaking Israel in light and Egypt in darkness. The wind blew, fierce and divine. The sea split, walls of water rose to the sky, and Israel walked through on dry ground. Pharaoh's army followed, blind with rage, but at God's command, the waters crashed back into place. The sea swallowed the might of Egypt, and on the far shore, Israel sang, "The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea." Their chains were gone. Their God had made a way through the impossible. Freedom had a name, and his name was Yahweh. Beyond the Red Sea, the people of Israel entered the wilderness, not into comfort, but into testing. For days they wandered and found no water. Their joy turned to grumbling. "Why did you bring us out here, Moses? To die?" But even in their complaint, God provided. At Marah, bitter waters turned sweet. At Elim, 12 springs bubbled beneath 70 palms. But it was only the beginning. When hunger gripped the people, they looked back. Not to freedom, but to Egypt's flesh pots. And again, God answered. In the morning the ground was covered in flakes, white like frost, delicate as dew. It was manna, the bread of heaven. And in the evening, quail fell across the camp, meat for every family. Yet still they doubted. At Rephidim, with no water, the people demanded, "Is the Lord even among us?" Moses cried out, and God said, "Strike the rock." And from that rock, water flowed. In the wilderness, Israel learned what it meant to depend on a God they could not control, but who never failed. They were not just being delivered from Egypt, they were being shaped for promise. 3 months after leaving Egypt, the people of Israel came to the foot of Mount Sinai, a mountain unlike any other, where heaven would meet earth. God called to Moses from the summit and said, "Tell my people, you have seen what I did to Egypt. Now, if you obey me fully, you will be my treasured possession, a holy nation." And the people answered with one voice, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do." Then the mountain trembled, thunder rolled across the skies, lightning split the heavens, a thick cloud descended with fire. The sound of a trumpet grew louder and louder. The people stood back, trembling. Even Moses said, "I am trembling with fear." And then God spoke, not in whispers, but in the thunderous voice of the Creator. "You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not take my name in vain. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. You shall not lie." These were not just rules. They were the very heart of God, written by his own finger onto stone. A covenant was formed, sealed in blood, confirmed by fire. Israel had been set free. Now they were being set apart. While Moses stood in the fire of God's presence, the people stood in the shadow of their own hearts. Days turned to weeks. The mountain rumbled, but the waiting became unbearable. And so they turned to Aaron and said, "Make us a God we can see, a God that will lead us." Aaron took their gold, gifts meant for worship, and melted them down. He formed a calf, a symbol of strength in Egypt, but an abomination before the Lord. They danced, they sang. They called it the God who brought us out of Egypt, but on the mountaintop, God saw. "Go down, Moses," he said. "Your people have corrupted themselves. God's wrath burned. Let me destroy them, and I will make a new nation from you." But Moses, the intercessor, stood in the gap. "Remember Abraham. Remember your promise." And the Lord relented. Moses descended, tablets in hand, fire still on his face. When he saw the calf, the dancing, The idolatry. He threw the tablets down, shattering the covenant. The golden calf was ground to dust. The dust was scattered in water, and the people drank their sin. That day, 3,000 fell, but even in wrath, God left room for mercy. Moses went back up the mountain, alone, and cried, "Forgive them, or blot me out." And God, in sorrow and love, promised, "My presence will go with you. I will give you rest." The covenant would be restored, not because of Israel's faithfulness, but because of God's. God did not merely free his people, he desired to dwell among them. On the mountain, the Lord gave Moses a vision, a pattern not of bricks and thrones, but of tents, gold, incense, and light. "Build me a sanctuary," he said, "that I may dwell in their midst." And so the tabernacle was born, not by the hand of kings, but by the hearts of craftsmen. Bezalel and Oholiab, filled with the Spirit of God, carved cherubim, hammered gold, dyed threads of blue and scarlet and purple. The Ark of the Covenant was set with gold. The lampstand lit the way. The altar stood as a bridge between sin and forgiveness. Curtains were woven. The tent was raised, every piece, every detail, exactly as the Lord commanded. And on the first day of the first month, in the second year, Moses finished the work. Then it happened. A cloud descended and covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle, not in silence, but in light, not in distance, but in presence. By day, the cloud remained. By night, a fire burned above it. And when it lifted, the people followed. But when it stayed, they stayed. Thus ended the journey from slavery to worship, from distant fear to divine nearness. God had not just delivered them, he had moved in. Smash the like button, hit subscribe and notification bell for your daily divine inspiration.